Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 11, I think it is already. We just finished up last week, at least in a preliminary way, talking about the ethic of Jesus in Matthew's Gospel. And, what is Jesus calling his followers to? Is it about doing? Is it about identity? And what does it look like? How do Jesus's followers look and behave differently in the world because they are followers of Jesus? What difference does it make? And that's the big ethical question that we've been talking about and reading some passages about. Certainly, passages like the sheep and the goats story and the Sermon on the Mount are formative in Matthew's Gospel. We move on this next 2 weeks to looking at relationships in Matthew's Gospel. What sorts of relationships does Jesus have with those people around him? The Pharisees, the scribes, the sinners, tax collectors, disciples, the crowds. What are the relationships that show up in Matthew's Gospel? How does the story paint a picture in terms of how Jesus relates to these people? And what do these relationships say about who Jesus is, what his message is, and again, about ethical living? If Matthew's Gospel, as Dale Allison said earlier in that article we read, if, as he said, an ancient biography is aimed at moral formation around the figure the biography is about, then certainly Jesus' relationships say something about what it means to live as a follower of Jesus. It says something about ethics just as much as it does about his identity. And as you can probably tell, there are themes that have been constantly weaving together in the past several weeks about identity and ethics and relationship. And all these things weave together in Matthew's Gospel, and should in our lives as well, as we proclaim the gospel, as we teach and exegete these scriptures. So this next 2 weeks, you'll focus on the relationships, the conflict, and the way Jesus either welcomes or even rejects certain people. So this week, we'll be focusing on the Pharisees and the religious leaders first. And this should be an important week for us because we are all religious leaders. And so the Pharisees are not people to be kept at arm's length distance away from us as if they are them and we are us. The Pharisees are probably the ones that we should be paying attention to most, because in a lot of ways, in the religious institutions of our time, we look a lot more like they do than we look like the tax collectors and sinners. So this week should be good, and then next week we'll turn and look at Jesus's relationships with just the general population, the tax collectors, the sinners, the people, the crowds, and what that says about who he is. All right, so enjoy this week, and I hope to have further good conversation as we go. A word about Greek this week. There is no Greek guide sheet this week, at least not in the specific sense that they have been in the past. I'm going to be asking you to draw attention to in your exegetical work. Draw attention to components that come out to you now. So now the ball is being passed to you all to point out curious things in the Greek text, to ask questions about the Greek text, to look and investigate. I'll still do some leading, but I want to pass it on to you to start to do that on your own now. So that's all there is to that, and keep your eye out for updates on the blog and things like that with the discussion. Enjoy this week.